So, hi everybody, I'm Steve.
And I'm Matt.
And welcome to Marvel Reread Club. Hey, I did it right that time.
Yeah, you did the intro. I'm so proud of you. You're all grown up.
Put on my big boy pants and I did it.
Yeah.
So, Matt, how are you doing these days?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. I had an extremely embarrassing thing where a big-time actress lives next door to us, and she got us tickets to see her show, and we got the date wrong and didn't go.
Oh.
And we got confused. And so, she ended up with 4 empty seats at her show. And we just feel awful. We just feel awful. And it's the sort of thing where, I sent her an abject apology email, and then she didn't respond right away. And I'm like, oh my God, she must be furious if she's not responding to this apology email, which is not the first time this month that I've sent someone an abject apology email they did not respond to. Well, then eventually she did get back to me, and she was entirely cool about it. So that was a big relief. But I just felt awful about the whole thing. Anyway, how have you been, Steve?
I've been doing all right, thanks. Amy and I got away to Myrtle Beach for a long weekend. Just got back. I got the worst sunburn I've gotten in many years, but that's because we just spent 2 entire days just floating in the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Just past the breakers. I mean, when was the last time I was able to just spend 2 days in a row doing something like that? So it's the sunburn will heal, but that was a great weekend. So.
Well, that's great. But now you've got another beach vacation for the next week, because we're all going on a beach vacation together. Our whole almost our whole 9-person family, 8 of the 9 people in our family. And then you've got a third vacation after that, where you're going up to Maine to see your daughter in a show. So you are a busy vacationer.
All right. Well, how about we get into actually talking about some funny books here?
All right, let's talk about it. So we have had guests for our last 4 episodes. We had fantastic guest appearances by true Marvel experts, Jeff Ryan and Douglas Wolk. But now we are on our own here for our last pre-expansion month. And this is either going to be the last month of Marvel Comics that we ever fit into 2 episodes, or we're going to start summarizing the books much more quickly. Marvel is about to shoot up to about 13 books a month.
I think we determined that the next month, April, is still 10 books in a month. So I think we'll still be able to do that one the way we've been doing them. But after that, we got to figure something else out.
Yeah, but let's go ahead and pretend that none of this is ever going to happen and do the 9 books of this month for now. Should we go ahead and begin with The Amazing Spider-Man number 58?
That is the one that I assume we're going to begin with.
All right, let's do The Amazing Spider-Man number 58, To Kill a Spider-Man. Wow, look who's back. We once again have a giant robot with J. Jonah Jameson's FaceTimed face on it, which is not the first time we've seen that, and indeed we'll find out this is the return of an old menace. Let's go ahead and jump into the issue. Wow, try to beat this combo if you can. Spectacular script, Smilin' Stan Lee, brilliant breakdown, jazzy Johnny Romita, fabulous finalizing, dashin' Donnie Heck, exotic embellishment, mighty Mickey DeMeo, luscious lettering, swingin' Sammy Rosen, and in the immortal words of Irving Forbush, woo! So, unfortunately, we still have this sort of Heck sandwich here where Romita is doing the basic penciling and presumably most of the plotting. Donnie Heck is finishing the pencils and Mickey DeMeo is inking, which is not as bad as it could be. Heck is largely getting squished between Romita and DeMeo, and it doesn't look anywhere near as bad as, say, X-Men will look this month, which is fully penciled by Heck.
So I noticed that in the credits, it says Johnny Romita, Donnie Heck, Mickey DeMeo, Sammy Rosen, but he doesn't say Stanley Lee.
So he doesn't want to admit that's his real name.
No, he does not. But everybody else gets a Y smacked on the end of their name, even the ones who don't usually have one.
Yes. So then, last we saw Kesar was holding a seemingly dead body of Spider-Man in Central Park. We now see him swinging away from Central Park, but he points out the masked man still lives. So it turned out he was just mistaken for dead very briefly, just long enough to end the issue, which is not the first time that has happened. We got the cops in Central Park are still dealing with Kesar's saber-toothed tiger Zabu. Of course, we find out, as I suspected would happen last issue, that Almost Drowning has cured Spider-Man's amnesia. And now he is fine. And he and Kesar basically agree to go their separate ways. Meanwhile, J. Jonah Jameson is contacted by a character we have not seen in a while, Professor Smythe, or Smythe. I assume that's Smythe.
I usually say Smythe, yeah.
Smythe, something like that. And he's still in his little home lab filled with spiders and is still trying to figure out how to build a spider slayer to hunt down Spider-Man, and wants to pick up where he left off with JJJ and resume what they were doing back in issue. They say it was issue 25. Is that true?
I did not double check that. I assumed that they knew what they were talking about.
They say, we think it was issue 25, dash smiley. Let's look it up. Yep, it was. Okay, back in issue 25, when Steve Ditko was still plotting, penciling, and inking the book, he had this character, Professor Smythe, contact J. Jonah Jameson. He had invented a robot called the Spider Slayer. I'm not sure it was actually called the Spider Slayer back then. And he wanted to set up JJJ to project his face onto the front of the robot and track down Spider-Man. Of course, that was a Ditko robot, which never looked like they could stand up on their own 2 feet. This time, we have Romita's version of the same thing, and oh boy, does it look much sturdier. Let's quickly deal with, we see John Jameson and Captain Stacy still talking about Spider-Man. We see Harry and Gwen visiting Aunt May in the hospital. Kazar realizes he has to deal with Zabu and goes his own separate way, while Spider-Man is left to deal with picking up the pieces of his life after having amnesia. We then, as I promised, cut to Smythe showing off his much sturdier Romita Spider Slayer to J. Jonah Jameson. J. Jonah Jameson is all on board. He's like, great, let's go butt some heads. We briefly see John Jameson stop by the office and talk to Robbie Robertson. It turns out they were both in the military. And then Peter Parker goes back to his apartment briefly when of course, as we discovered last time, the Spider Slayer knows how to track down Spider-Man. It knows how to track down his spider essence. So it finds him in his apartment, does not put 2 and 2 together. J. Jonah Jameson says, we got him dead to rights, burglarizing someone's apartment. Does not figure out that he is actually in his own apartment. And they get in a big fight. The fight lasts for several pages. Eventually, J. Jonah Jameson realizes that Smythe will not be happy until Spider-Man is dead, that he wants revenge for the previous incident, and he is going to kill Spider-Man. So J. Jonah Jameson is, at this point, resisting and fighting against Smythe, and then Spider-Man figures out to go back to Smythe's laboratory. Smythe is not there, but he figures out that he can overload and blow up the robot there, which he does, and J. Jonah Jameson then kicks Smythe out and says, you were going to kill him. If you had been satisfied to just capture him like I wanted to, we'd have won. Get out, you bum. I've got a good mind to turn you over to the police. So then Peter Parker runs into Kazar and Zabu on the street, who basically sniff him out and figure out he's really Spider-Man, but decide to go their own way. Next issue, prepare to meet the Brainwasher. So, Steve, what did you think of this issue?
It was fine. As he said, this is a nicely improved Spider Slayer. It has its charm to it. I especially like J. Jonah Jameson's interacting with the Spider Slayer interface. When Smythe is driving him through the city at some point, J. Jonah Jameson has the controlling apparatus on his lap, and he's playing around with it, and it just says to Smythe, "What a fun way to pass the time," as he's controlling the Spider Slayer. Later, when Jameson has the Spider Slayer control mechanism in his office, Betty comes in and says, "Mr. Jameson, I didn't know you would return so soon." "Oh, what?" And he says, "Out! Stay out! Do you hear? I don't want to be disturbed while I'm in conference." I'm like, oh, is that what the kids are calling it these days? And then later, Spider-Man at one point is using the phone book to look something up. I forget what the whole deal was.
Look up where Smythe's laboratory is, yeah, so he can take the fight there.
Yes. And Spider-Man is thinking to himself, when looking for him in the phone book, no reason why he wouldn't be listed. He's not a fugitive, or, uh-oh, here comes Chuckles again. And, just the whole idea that once upon a time, all of our contact information was available to everybody at all times.
In a giant book that was printed up and sent to everybody's house for free. Yes.
Yes, exactly. And that you would have to go and proactively work to take your information out of there. And generally that was only done if you were a fugitive or a celebrity of some sort. And that was about it, right? Other than that. I think some single women would generally tend to do that for obvious reasons. But, yeah, just the whole idea that it's like, no, of course he's going to be listed in here. I mean, he's not a fugitive.
Yeah, I guess that was the thing in old movies. They'd be like, hey, baby, I'll give you a call sometime. And the woman would coldly say, I have an unlisted number. As a way of turning down jerks. Yes.
Yes. Anyway, yeah, it was fun. Spider Slayer is always good for a fun story.
Yeah, we'll get him returning many times over the years. Yeah, I end my notes by going, okay, issue, great to have Amnesia over. Spider Slayer was formidable villain. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and move along in that case to Daredevil number 38. Now,
good luck summarizing this issue. It is crazy. Do not try to cover every plot turn in this issue. Sum up.
I will do my best. As I told you earlier, I ended up just finishing reading X-Men right before we started recording, so I didn't have a chance to go back and reacquaint myself with some of these stories. So, but I think I can go ahead and do a pretty rough plot summary here. So
that is all we need.
Daredevil, the Man Without Fear, The Living Prison. Rejoice, O Marveldom. Stan the Man Lee and Gene the Dean Colan have done it again. Done what? Is what I ask. Staunchly supported by Frank Giacoia embellisher. So good. We have Frank Giacoia back as the inker on this. That's good. And Sam Rosen letterer. And Irving Forbush apple polisher.
The cover at first looks like Daredevil is being reflected in Doom's mask, and then you realize, like, wait, that makes no sense. He doesn't have... How can he be reflected by the mouth? The mouth is a big open gash. Shit. And then you realize, no, this is just sort of the ghost of Daredevil floating over the face of Doom, and this isn't actually a reflection, but that's a little unclear. It's actually kind of a cool cover of just Doom's huge face with Daredevil, sort of the ghost of Daredevil floating in it, once you realize that it's not what it first looks like.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really put together that's not what it was. I was still thinking it was somehow a nice flat reflection in this craggy sort of not that highly polished metal thing. But yeah, I guess what you're describing makes a little bit more sense. So, in our previous issue, Dr. Doom had used a brain transferal device acting like he had just invented such a thing in order to transfer his mind and Daredevil's mind into each other's bodies. So Dr. Doom left Daredevil imprisoned back behind in his castle in Doom's body. So Doom's body with Daredevil's brain is now behind Doom's bars in Doom's embassy.
Yes, this always gets confusing when you're trying to describe these issues.
Yes, and then meanwhile, Doom's mind in Daredevil's body has left and is going to the Fantastic Four to do the exact same stupid idea that Trapster tried to do in the previous issue. So,
in a completely unrelated storyline. We just have two completely unrelated storylines which happen to be almost identical to each other back to back.
Well, Doom did not think this out that well because, of course, when his flunkies find Doom imprisoned in Doom's own castle, they are going to let Doom out of Doom's prison, right? So Daredevil as Doom is able to convince them that he actually is Dr. Doom. Meanwhile, Daredevil's body, once again, this is good. Okay, you know what? I just need to jump forward. I just want to point out that on page 3, that last panel where Doom is inside Daredevil's body and he is strutting like like John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever or something like that.
Yeah, Cohen's doing a pretty good job trying to show through body language that this is not Matt Murdock inside his own body.
Yes. So Dr. Doom is trying to let the Fantastic Four know that Daredevil is coming, and they're like, oh, is this actually Daredevil or is this not? We can't quite tell with our stuff we've got here. Daredevil ends up fighting a bunch of... Sorry. Oh, man. All right, so here's the thing. Eventually... we have Daredevil in Doom's body where it's like, oh, I can suddenly see, but I don't have my other senses, and this armor is really heavy, and I don't really know how to use it the way that Doom does. Doom, meanwhile, is in Daredevil's body and can't see, but has the greater senses. And he thinks that the not being able to see is actually just part of the costume, apparently,
oddly.
Which is a little bit oddly enough. It's like, oh, he did this to be better for his other senses. It's like, no, that's not really how things work. So, yeah, there's a whole interaction between Doom and Daredevil's body with the ex-con who is now trying to date Foggy once again, and it looks like it's just going to make Foggy and Karen more angry with Daredevil than they sometimes are. Daredevil, as Dr. Doom, decides that, hey, I know a way to get Dr. Doom to come back and switch our bodies back. I am going to contact the ministers in Latveria and tell them to unilaterally declare war on all 4 of their neighboring countries simultaneously. Yes. And so it's interesting, though, that it turns out that they've got 4 neighboring countries, and one of them is allied not with the Soviet Union, but with Red China.
Yes.
So I'm trying to figure out where the heck would this be? Where would make any sense? And nothing makes any sense. That would not do anything. So Doom then returns with Daredevil's body back to the mind transferal room, transfers their minds back, and Daredevil leaves, but then Doom contacts the Fantastic Four and tells them, hey, Daredevil is coming to attack you, but he's actually a bad guy, and so you should clobber him. He's actually Dr. Doom. So Doom is telling the Fantastic Four that Daredevil is actually Dr. Doom, which he is not any longer, but that's what they're telling them, so that, next issue, Daredevil's going to be fighting the Fantastic Four. So, yes. There you go.
In the next issue, not the next issue of Daredevil, in the next issue of the Fantastic Four, which is not the next issue of Fantastic Four we will be discussing. We will be discussing this month's issue of Fantastic Four, but when we discuss next month's issue of Fantastic Four, we will see Daredevil show up.
Yes, it says, we proudly announce that this swingin' epic will be concluded in Fantastic Four number 73, now on sale, while our next Daredevil features the Exterminator, who says this isn't the Marvel Age of Excitement. Not us, Stan and Jean. So there we have it. It is a monumentally silly book. It has some great Colan art in it from time to time. Once again, there's no other things I need to bring up about this issue. I'm good. I've told you everything it needs to be told. How about yourself?
Yes, I think you did an excellent job summing up this issue as much as it needed to be summed up, given that it is almost impossible to sum up without constantly saying the words Doom and Daredevil's body and Daredevil and Doom's body. Yeah, the whole thing is just inane in so many ways, like the fact that Doom and Daredevil's body thinks he can just lock up Daredevil and Doom's body in a prison in his own dungeon, as if Daredevil and Doom's body cannot then just call out and go like, hey, guards, let me out. I'm your boss. Like, okay, right. He should have figured out that would have been a very easy way to escape. I'm glad that Daredevil and Doom's body, as soon as he escapes, it says, I'm just going to get on the phone and call the Fantastic Four and tell them tell them what's going on, which is so rarely done in these stories, that someone just picks up the phone and settles these things. Yeah, I really like how, so like, once Daredevil and Doom's body frees himself, he sends a bunch of goons to go attack Daredevil, who is really Doom and Daredevil's body, and then Doom and Daredevil's body beats up the goons, convinces them that he is really Doom, and then says, no, go beat up Doom. Go beat up Daredevil and Doom's body. So then the same goons first on the street mob seemingly Daredevil and get their asses kicked, and then they go and mob seemingly Doom and they get their asses kicked by him. So this poor mob is just they're all turned around at this point. But the one thing that is consistent in all this is that they keep getting their asses kicked. I say at one point in my notes, I can't keep up with the plot. Lots of shenanigans. I end with inane issue, nothing makes sense, but kind of fun. Great to have Giacoya back as inker. And that was it for my notes.
Sure. All right.
Okay.
So, good. I'm glad we were able to dispatch with that one relatively quickly, so we can move on to Thor, which is much better.
Yes. Let's go to Thor, Even in Death, Thor number 150. So this, you would think they might do a big celebration for issue 150. They don't. It's a perfectly normal issue, although it's a good issue. So when last we saw, Spider-Man was seemingly dead and Thor were seemingly dead in their own books. Well, it turns out Thor was a lot closer to dead than Spider-Man was, because Spider-Man just woke up fine in the next issue, whereas Thor, as we see on the cover, is having his soul summoned out of his body by Hela. Hela, of course, is not Thor's sister, as she is in the Thor Ragnarok movie. She is the goddess of death. I think at some point they may give some lip service to her being Loki's daughter at some point, who I think she was in the original mythos. The mighty Thor, even in death, presenting a pictorial monument to the towering talents of Stan the Manly and Jack King Kirby, creators of wonderment beyond mortal measure, dazzlingly delineated by Vincent Coletta, lovingly lettered by Sam Rosen, a living tribute to Marveldom assembled. So the Wrecker unburies Thor and confirms, yes, he is indeed dead.
I will say this splash page, this first splash page in the issue, does have some example of some of Coletta's better inking, like the rubble that's there. Coletta's scratchy kind of style works quite well with the textures on some of that rubble.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and he actually doesn't do a bad job with Thor's hair, for that matter, in this one.
No.
Good Coletta work here.
Yes. So then the Wrecker unburies Thor, confirms he's actually dead. In fact, when the Wrecker then stalks away, we see Hela, the goddess of death, show up and suck Thor's soul out of his body. Then we walk away on that harrowing stuff going on. Loki is hanging out with Karnilla, Queen of the Norns. I think this is the first time Karnilla has been named. I think she's always just been called the Norn Queen before now. And she is, of course, always in love with Balder, who is at this point entering into her kingdom, trying to come up with a way to save Thor. He and Sif are entering into the kingdom. They get attacked by Barbaric, warrior god of the Norn Queen's domain, who has the most badass bow and arrow I have ever seen on page 5. It is a jagged toothed bow that is quite badass. Yes. And he's shooting these giant tuning forks at Balder and pinning him to trees. They get into a big fight that lasts for several pages, but then Sif has disappeared. She has seemingly been taken. Cut back to Hela sucking Thor's soul out of his body, and we get to a bizarre plot turn where he's like, okay, I'm dead. You've sucked my soul out of my body, but before you take my soul to Valhalla, can I just run around as a disembodied soul and still try to save the Earth? And Hela's like, okay. Go then, God of Thunder. Well can Hela bide her time. And he says, though I am but a living wraith, Thor shall not falter. So then she's just going to sit around and wait while his disembodied spirit tries to save things. But it turns out he can't. He goes to where the Wrecker is wrecking things, and nobody knows he's there, and he can't touch anybody, or nobody can hear him, or taste him, or smell him, or he's just a disembodied ghost. So this isn't working at all.
While this is going on, I just pointed out some praise for Coletta. I will now point out that on page 10, that final panel, look at the Wrecker's face.
Yeah.
Look at his eyes.
Yeah,
I mean,
those are Coletta eyes.
Those are the bad Coletta eyes. There are some Coletta eyes where I'm like, oh, those are good Coletta eyes. These are bad Coletta eyes. Yes. Yep. Anyway, go on.
So then the trolls manage to take Balder captive. Meanwhile, Karnilla is talking to Sif, who has indeed been dragged back to her kingdom. She is saying, oh, look, there's Thor. He's dead. Look, there's Balder. He's captured. And then she's like, but I know how to solve all this. You can take over the shell of the Destroyer, which is a bizarre plot turn. The Destroyer, I think, last seen in the second Thor annual. She's saying, I want you to take over. Only you can save Thor from the Wrecker. And Sif's like, well, that's not actually a bad idea when you put it that way.
Right.
The Destroyer probably is the only thing that can stop the Wrecker, and I can take over the Destroyer and do it. And, okay, let's go ahead and do it. Anything. Sif dares anything to save the valiant Thor, says Sif, referring to herself in third person. And indeed, then meanwhile, once Thor realizes that as a disembodied soul, he can't actually do anything, he goes back and finds that Hela, despite saying that she could wait, actually could not wait and is left. So he's like, okay, I'll just take back over my body and I'll be fine then if the goddess of death is no longer there. But then he doesn't actually have to fight the Wrecker, because then the Destroyer shows up to fight the Wrecker, and the Destroyer destroys the Wrecker. The Destroyer shatters the crowbar, beats him up, and leaves him unconscious or dead. But then Thor shows up. It's like, oh, the Destroyer. I will go ahead and fight the Destroyer. 'Tis known by all. The Destroyer doth live but to kill. So be it then. Thor cries to the death, and he's going to fight the Destroyer, not knowing that it is Sif, that Sif is inside the Destroyer. And we in turn reply, continued next ish. Yeah, I say in my notes, great high-stakes issue. Like, the stakes cannot be higher in this issue in terms of life and death. And I say great Kirby and okay, Coletta. So what did you think of this issue, Steve?
I thought it was really entertaining.
Yeah.
Overall, I mean, the Wrecker is always tons of fun. Karnilla the Norn Queen, I love page 14, final panel on that page.
Yes.
We often get wonderful evil cackles from villains. We don't often see evil cackles from villainesses. And,
Yeah.
let me tell you, Carnilla has one hell of an evil laugh going on there. Always great to see the Destroyer as well. Yeah, this issue is well drawn, fun story, fun characters. Overall, I think I definitely got my 12 cents worth.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's before we even get to the backup issue, which is just going to give you even more value for your 12 cents. The backup story, the origin of the incomparable Inhumans, Triton, always my least favorite Inhuman because he can't be outside of water, which makes him not a good story engine. But it says, please deliver all plaudits and accolades to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby for this exquisite epic, inked by Joe Sinnott, lettered by Artie Simek. Now, unfortunately, this month we're going to start losing Sinnott. He is not going to be inking Captain America this week, but he is still inking Fantastic Four and the Inhumans backup feature. And so then we have Triton, who is exploring outside of Attilan for the first time, outside of the waters around Attilan, presumably. And then he sees a swamp creature attacking a beautiful woman. He's like, oh, I'm going to have to rescue her. Well, whoops, these are just people shooting a movie. They are shooting a swamp creature type movie.
It looks exactly like the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yes.
And at first I looked at it, I'm like, oh, come on, Kirby. You're really cheating on this design. It just looks exactly like the creature from the Black Lagoon. And then I saw the next plot point. I'm like, oh, no, that totally makes sense. That was on purpose.
But then the people, they've got really good security on this movie because they have 3 guys with tranquilizer guns who suddenly come out and shoot Triton, and then they take him captive, put him in a little tank, and they're taking him back to the surface world. And Triton's not that bothered by this because he was wanting to explore the surface world enemy. He says, no one will put Triton on exhibit, but I shall give them no hint of my true strength yet. Instead, I will bide my time and study those who intend to study me. Then when I am ready, the world will learn the power of Triton. So we're going to continue the story next issue. I thought this was a perfectly fine story, with one of my not favorite characters in it. But it was fun. They've done this story so many times in Marvel Comics of like, look, some, crime is happening. Oh, it's just a movie they're shooting without any lights or cameras or anything that would make it very obvious that they were shooting a movie. But it's fine. It's perfectly fine. The Sinnott inking is gorgeous. I like this issue fine. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, the Sinnott inking is great. Anything with scales, if you can get Sinnott to ink that, it's going to look beautiful.
Yeah.
That being said, so this is modern day, clearly. I mean, probably maybe a decade before these comics were coming out, right? Like Creature of the Black Lagoon was like 50s.
Yeah.
And so, Triton is a grown adult Triton at this point. So wasn't Attilan in the mountains at this point?
Don't ever ask that question. Attilan moves and moves and moves. I mean, obviously, Attilan has to be somewhere where Triton can live nearby. Attilan must have, yes, it was at one point listed as being in the Andes Mountains, at another point listed as being in the Himalayan Mountains. But clearly there is some sort of, large body of water right by it because Triton can't be out of water and he's one of the royal family.
Yeah, sure. Okay. This is one of the problems I have with the Inhumans, generally.
Yes.
All right. No, that's all I have to say about that. Good art overall. I'm wishy-washy on the story.
Yes, I agree. I end by saying, okay, issue, great Sinnott inks, fun twist. So that brings us to the final issue of Tales to Astonish. Tales to Astonish number 101. This book will never be seen again after this issue.
Oh, I'm sure that at some point in the 90s or 2000s or 2010s or something like that, they put out some mini-series called Tales to Astonish.
That's an interesting question, but I don't think they did, but we'll see.
Okay. Well, one way or the other, not for decades, if ever. So, yes, Tales to Astonish, The Incredible Hulk and the Submariner, Where Walk the Immortals. Panoramically produced by Stan Lee and Marie Severin, inking F.G. Okoye, lettering Artie Simek. So we start out with the Hulk story first here. So yeah, in our previous issue, there had been that big battle with the Submariner, to where it was a unified book for that particular episode. And in the end of this insane story, Bruce Banner was left just laying on a beach. However, somebody doesn't want him to still be Bruce Banner. So even though he had just changed to Bruce Banner, someone from way off in the world, in the universe, is turning him back into the Hulk. Turns out this is Loki. So this is weird how this story interacts with the Thor story that was just going on. In the previous issue of Thor, Loki was trying to make sure that Odin wouldn't be able to find out how serious, how dire things had become for Thor on Earth, and Balder and Sif were trying to overcome this and trying to bring this to Odin's attention. Well, it turns out that simultaneously, Loki was trying to do everything he could to occupy Odin with other things. And this is what he is doing. He turned Bruce Banner back into the Hulk and then transported the Hulk to the gates of Asgard. So he's now on the Rainbow Bridge. Heimdall tries to stop him before he can get into Asgard, but Hulk is actually able to make the Rainbow Bridge wobble so much that it knocks Heimdall off of the bridge. And Marie Severin does a great job on page 4 showing the wobbly Rainbow Bridge there. It very much looks like it's wiggling and wobbling and throwing somebody off. So Hulk leaps his way into Asgard proper. Heimdall can't do anything about it since he can't leave the bridge. Hulk is then confronted by Hogan, who says, hey, I'm not going to fight an unarmed person, but clearly you got to be fought because you're not supposed to be here. So here's a battle axe. You can go ahead and take this so I can now fight you. And Hulk just pulverizes the battle axe, just like claps his hands together, and it just disappears into a cloud of dust, which is quite nice. And I love the job that Marie Severin is doing with the horse on page 6.
Yes.
That's a wonderful depiction of Hogan on that horse there.
So we should talk about how wonderful it is to have the Warriors 3 back. The Warriors 3 have not been around ever since the Tales of Asgard feature was discontinued in Thor. And this is I think the only second time we've seen them in modern day. We saw them interact with the Destroyer back in the Thor annual. But it is so wonderful to have the Warriors 3 back in the modern day Marvel Universe interacting with modern day Marvel characters. And Volstagg is just as wonderful as ever. I just love Volstagg's dialogue in this issue.
Yes, at one point I have a note here for the next page. Fandral is saying, "At last, a foe most worthy of our skill. Yon green-skinned gladiator hath power enow for us all. Let us hasten to the fray before it be untimely ended." And Volstagg says, "Most generous Volstagg shall permit thee to be the first, since mine own prowess be so awesome, 'twould be unseemly to hurl it against one foe alone."
Yes. I love it. I always love Volstagg.
Yes, and then on the next page, Hulk picks up Volstagg's horse. Once again, we always seem to love to see horses being thrown around by the Hulk, apparently.
Yes.
And is able to throw Volstagg from the horse. And Volstagg is stuck in a hole, like he's been fallen into a crater, basically. And he says, "Fandral, Hogan, I beg thee, restrain me, hold me back. I have no wish to destroy yon stranger with but a single blow," as he's clearly just hiding in this hole that he's made. Yes, tons of fun, and I had not really put together that we hadn't really seen the Warriors 3 since they ended the previous backup feature. So at this point, the rest of Asgardian warriors all show up, and they want to attack the Hulk. This is right around the time, had the Warriors 3 figured out that he was not actually a bad guy? Yeah, so right as the Warriors 3 figure out, wait a minute, maybe something else is going on here, maybe we don't need to fight this guy right now. Right then, all the rest of the Warriors of Asgard show up. So they start attacking the Hulk. The Warriors 3 then are holding them all back and being like, wait, this is all a misunderstanding. You don't need to be here. And then Loki shows up and he's like, "What are you doing? No, you've got to fight this guy." The Warriors 3 are trying to then guide the Hulk to where he needs to actually be, jumping over this bottomless chasm. The Hulk is like, "Oh, that's no problem for me." And then Loki turns him back into Bruce Banner mid-leap, and he is about to plunge to his doom in the middle of this chasm.
Yes.
Next issue, the Hulk in his own mag at long last.
Uh-oh.
So, this is a fun story. I really liked this one. How about you, Matt?
I love this issue. So it's interesting. We've got Giacoya on Severin. Is this the first time we've seen that? I think so.
Might be.
And
it's a good combo. It works.
It's a great combo, I think. She tends to be somewhat of a craggy penciler, sort of detailed fine line, and Giacoya is not so much of a detailed inker. He's sort of smoothing over her work a little bit, but I think it really looks nice together. I think that the Warriors 3 look great. It's, I guess, have we seen anybody but Kirby draw the Warriors 3 up until this point? I don't think we have.
I don't believe so.
But Severin does a great job with them, and with the Hulk, and with everybody else, and with Asgard itself. Asgard itself looks great. I'm not sure we've seen anybody but Kirby try Asgard itself up until this point, for that matter. I guess back when Kirby wasn't doing Thor, we got to see some other people do it for a while. But it's been a long time. Asgard looks majestic. The Rainbow Bridge looks majestic. Heimdall looks great. Everything about this issue looks great. It's interesting. Loki has no power in Thor these days. Loki hasn't had any power in about 6 months, but he's fully powered here. So this story presumably happens before or after the current goings on in Thor.
Well, but it's but they make it very clear that this is during the current issue of Thor. That this is the whole point of Loki bringing Hulk to Asgard is to further distract Odin from learning how dire the situation is on Earth. Yeah, that's a very good point. I had not put that together, that Loki is supposed to be depowered at this point.
Yeah, but I end my notes by going, great issue, one of my favorites, one of my favorite issues of Hulk ever. Fantastic plot, script, penciling, and inking.
Yeah, I would not argue with that very much at all.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so shall we move on to Prince Namor the Submariner?
Oh, well, yes, we have to.
Well, I like the art in this one, certainly.
No, I do too. The art is shockingly good in this one. Why don't you go ahead and give us the title and credits?
Yes, and evil shall beckon. Under the artful auspices of Stan Lee, those lovable legend makers, Archie Goodwin, yay, and Gene Colan, all right, amiably aided by Colan-Adkins inker, and Artie Simek letterer, have powerfully packaged another wistful wonderwork calculated to make you shout Imperious Rex. And Gene Colan and Colan-Adkins is a combo that I would think would not work well together, but they work shockingly well together.
I take back complaining about moving on to Namor. I was thinking about how Namor usually is. In fact, Goodwin, it's a pretty good issue this time, and I really like the Colan-Adkins art. You know, obviously, Colan is Marvel's loosest, sketchiest penciler. Adkins is a much more solid inker, and having Adkins solidifying Colan's pencils. Now, keep in mind, when the Namor originally got his own book, when he first took over half of Tales to Astonish, we had Colan do the first 9 issues or so inked by Coletta, and it was just awful. It was just an awful combo.
It was trash.
Now having Colan back inked by Adkins is 1,000 times better.
Yes, absolutely. So Namor is out cold, presumably, resting after his big confrontation with the Hulk in the previous issue. And he has a vision while asleep of this questionable-looking dude saying, "Namor, do you hope to forget me? Do you dare to ignore me? Namor, is your hatred so easily stilled? Is your memory so easily cleansed? Namor, can you..." Anyway, so Namor wakes up and he's like, you know what? I had amnesia for like a decade or more, and there's still gaps in my memory. I still don't remember certain things, and this seems like something that might be calling from one of those gaps in my memory starting to reassert itself. And so maybe I need to go and track this memory down. What is he doing? He's heading off for the original Atlantis to see if something there can jog his memory. As he's flying...
the one that's off by Antarctica.
Yes. By the way, one thing I just recently read, and I haven't confirmed this, but it seems to track, is that apparently Arctic comes from the Greek word Arctis, which means bears. So the Arctic Circle literally means the circle that contains bears. Mm-hmm. And then that means that the Antarctic would be the circle that does not contain bears.
Which is true.
Which is true, indeed. I haven't double checked to make sure that isn't just some kind of etymological coincidence, but one way or the other, I choose to believe it.
Or an entomological coincidence if ants are involved.
Yes, but I don't think ants and bears are closely related.
Yeah.
Okay, so unless you're talking about a bugbear.
I had thought about going there, but I figured this joke was getting a little sweaty, so I didn't.
Not going to stop me. So anyway, to get back to what we're talking about here, Submariner is flying on his way there and somehow passes by a U.S. radar installation, and they send a fighter up to check it out and to track the Submariner. Neither one of them are really looking to fight each other, but it's one of these things where tensions rise. And then at one point, the pilot does end up sending a couple of small missiles at the Submariner, who then throws one of them back at him, destroys the plane, but clearly the pilot, who is just doing his patriotic American duty, is able to pop out and save himself with his parachute. So meanwhile, as Submariner is going to try and find the old Antarctic Atlantis, it seems that the current denizens of New Atlantis are looking to move once again, that their city was so damaged by the plunderer that they are going to head off wandering in the sea once more. Which makes things...
I really love the bottom of page 6, where you have the citizens of Atlantis realizing they have to abandon the ruins of New Atlantis. I think it looks like something out of Gone with the Wind or something. It looks like a really epic sweep panel. It looks really nice.
Yes, it is very well done. Although it ends up just making things a little more complicated than I think they need to be, with Namor going to the ruins of old Atlantis, and then meanwhile the Atlanteans are in the, declaring the new Atlantis to also be ruins. It kind of makes things a little bit more complicated than I think it needs to be. Speaking of more than it needs to be, look on page 7, panel 3. What percentage of that panel is taken up with word balloons?
Yes, I would say maybe 85% of the panel is word balloons.
I was going to say like 80%. Yeah, something like that. That's a lot of word balloons. Anyway, they're setting up yet another little love triangle here where Warlord Seth, whom we met in the previous issue, has a thing for Dorma. So who knows where that's going to go, but, that's fine.
Dorma, who is crying underwater, as always.
Oh, yes. You've always got to love her tears while she's underwater. That's a great point. I just have to assume they're like oil or something like that.
Yes.
All right. Namor is sort of instinctively drawn to this place in the Antarctic mountains, and he's not sure why he's there. He ends up just lashing out in frustration at an ice wall, and it so happens that, oh no, he was drawn here for a reason, because inside this wall is a whole ice cave with a frozen civilization that is underneath here, and then an ice warrior of some sort comes out of nowhere and starts fighting him, and Namor is able to defeat him, and then he meets this guy who he saw in his vision at the beginning of this story. He says, "Those burning eyes, that mocking smile, 'tis the same evil countenance that I did behold in my dream." Next issue, a man called Destiny. And Destiny looks a little more silly than he should, I think. He's, certainly looks malevolent, but I don't know. What do you think of Destiny here?
Oh, I don't know. I think he's menacing enough.
All right. Well, fine. Fair enough. Anyway, there we have it. That is what I have to say about this issue. Other than the fact that we haven't really seen spectacular work from him yet, but I'm just really happy that Archie Goodwin is now on the scene, and I'm looking forward to him really breaking out into what he can offer. And I really was, as I said, shockingly happy with the combination of Colan and Adkins here.
Yeah, I think you may be disappointed in Goodwin. His 1960s Marvel work does not exactly coat himself in glory. He does okay on Iron Man. He does okay on Namor. He will never be ideally a superhero writer. He's really, he's really great at doing war comics over at Warren. He's really great at doing Secret Agent comics and Star Wars comics in the newspaper pages. But he does okay. He begins, we failed to note last month that it was Stan Lee's last issue of Iron Man, I think, ever, and Goodwin takes over this month. And Goodwin takes over Namor, or he took it over a couple months ago, I think. But if you're expecting like legendary Goodwin work at Marvel in the 60s, I think you're going to be disappointed.
All right.
I say in my notes, first time getting Adkins over Colan, ideal combination, very loose penciler and very solid inker, great combo. I think the weakest thing about this issue by far, and this is on Goodwin, is just Namor has a solid reason to go to old Atlantis, but then suddenly he just decides, actually, I'm going to go to Antarctica instead for no reason. He says, even his instinct has led me here. Somewhere in my mind, I sense an urging to go yet farther, as though in the past I did wing along the same self-course. But what drew me then to strike out across this glacial wasteland, and why I must pursue this impulse to its end? That's just really weak plotting. Can't he at least see something? You've already gotten him almost all the way to Antarctica. Can't he see something or hear something going on in Antarctica instead of just having an odd impulse to try it? I don't know. That annoyed me.
I can see that's definitely one of your pet peeves. And I definitely can see that, but I think that they set it up nicely enough that he seems to be feeling this is some kind of recovered memories that are coming back to him from his period of amnesia, and that I could see that, I don't know, wait, this seems to be the right direction. Why am I don't know, maybe something in my memory, maybe something in my brain. It seems to work for me in this particular case, but usually I can see what you're saying. In this case, I think it's acceptable.
Okay, you make a pretty strong case. I'll go for that. I'll go along with that. Other than that, I thought that this was, okay issue, weak story motivator, really nice art. So sure. That's my final feeling on this issue.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to X-Men, which is your turn.
So we got two X-Men. For some reason, they started something in X-Men where they have the X-Men written really small and then say what is going on in this issue written really big, which is very strange. It says the X-Men featuring the death of Professor X, which is where the normal logo would be. And it says, not a hoax, not a dream, not an imaginary tale. This is for real, which is sort of borrowing stuff that would happen a lot in the DC Weisinger Superman comics, where they constantly had a lot of hoax and dreams and imaginary tales, and whenever they tried to have a shocking thing happen, they would have to promise it wasn't one of those. We get a big tease here because we get a really nice Buscema cover of Professor X keeling over while floating heads of the X-Men look on in agony, and it turns out to just be a complete tease because the inside of the book is just awful. Let's go ahead and go to the inside of the book.
Well, is it just me, or is Iceman not John Buscema?
I did one, even as I was saying that, I'm like, well, they all look very, very much like Buscema except for Iceman.
And who looks very much like Werner Roth.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I wonder if maybe John Buscema's Iceman just didn't look like Iceman usually looks, and they're like, we got to get this redone. I don't know. Okay, so not just me. All right.
Yeah, I did have the same thought. Go inside the issue, X-Men, the most unusual fighting team of all time, the story we never expected to print, If I Should Die. Stan Lee proudly and with praiseworthy perspicacity presents yet another Roy Thomas Don Heck Marvel masterwork, inked by George Tuska, lettered by Sam Rosen. Now, I said last issue that Tuska was doing a nice job on Heck, tamping down some of his problems. Well, Heck seems to have reasserted himself in this issue because Tuska is not saving him. Look at this first page. None of the 4 feet of these people are on the same plane in any way, shape, or form. We have the Angel. Now, of course, the Angel has wings, so his feet may logically not be on the floor. But we've got the Angel and Iceman walking down a hallway. The perspective is just awful. Contact of the people on the ground is just awful. Everything about this page is just shockingly terrible. And, of course, the Angel has a terrible costume, but that's not Heck's fault. Or was it? Did Heck design the costumes?
I think Heck actually did design the costume.
Okay, everything is Heck's fault. So, Angel and Iceman are confronting Marvel Girl and Professor X, who are still keeping big secrets from everybody. Meanwhile, we cut to Beast and Cyclops, who are still fighting Grotesque underground. They go on to fight for some time. Now, this was very confusing because I thought that they were saying last issue that Grotesque wanted to stop this crazy Earthman who had an earthquake-making machine, which would obviously threaten Grotesque's kingdom. Well, no, it seems that Grotesque is trying to encourage the man with the earthquake-making machine because Grotesque wants to steal the earthquake-making machine and use it to attack the surface world, which makes no sense. Like, how would he even know about this thing existing? The whole thing makes no sense. But anyway, they are going there. Meanwhile, this is confusing plotting because now Cyclops and Beast, even though they were mid-fight with Grotesque, are back at the X Mansion talking to everybody. Marvel Girl is still keeping big secrets. Then we cut to the place where they had the earthquake-making machine. Grotesque breaks in to try to steal the earthquake-making machine, but it turns out the scientist is actually Professor X in disguise. Which, what? Huh? No, I don't understand. Makes no sense.
And he's walking around.
And he's walking around with his walking machinery that he hasn't used in quite some time. And Grotesque goes in and takes control of the earthquake machine. Is about to make an earthquake when suddenly the X-Men show up to fight him. Jean goes up to the professor. It's like, "Sir, are you all right?" And he says, "That's not important now. Look, Grotesque is strayed from the oscillotron pursuing Scott. You've got to turn off the machinery. Hurry." So whenever anybody in a story says, whenever someone asks someone in a story, "Are you okay?" and they're like, "That's not important now," then you always know they're going to die. And in fact, he does. They defeat Grotesque. They blow him up. And Grotesque is finished. The explosion killed him. So rare time when they actually just flat out kill the villain. And although I guess the explosion was somewhat his own fault. So there you go. He killed himself accidentally. But then they go to Professor X, who is still dying from, I guess, just basically being thrown. What is he dying from here exactly? I guess rubble fell on him.
I think it was the same explosion that just killed Grotesque. He wasn't quite as close. But also they seem to imply that he was already dying of something, and that has to do with the whole thing with him and Jean in the last couple of issues. But it was really unclear to me.
Yes, it is very unclear. But he's dead. Angel, he dies in Angel's arms. Angel picks his body up and carries it away, and he will remain dead for the next, guess how many issues? Guess how many issues he remains dead, Steve?
Let's see, what issue are we at here? 42? Let's say 30 issues.
I think he comes back in 67, so I think it's exactly 25 issues that he will remain dead, which is a long time for Professor X to remain dead. They've always come up with sort of ways to try to get him out of the book, and this is the ultimate one. Now, eventually, it will turn out that this is not Professor X, that this is the Changeling turned into Professor X, and Professor X has actually faked his own death so that he can go off and fight the alien race, the Xanax, but that will not be revealed for another 25 issues. And for as far as I think Roy Thomas thought he was really dead at this point, and certainly everyone who wasn't Roy Thomas thought he was dead because Roy Thomas told them so. So then it says next issue, and now Magneto. So I think it's okay to kill off Professor X. I think that having Grotesque kill him off is a little silly because Grotesque is such a lame villain. I think the art in this issue is just shockingly bad, one of the worst penciled Marvel comics I've ever seen. Heck seems to have just been in a tremendous rush. Nobody's feet ever seem to connect to the floor. There's no backgrounds at all in many of the panels. There are just the scratchiness of the faces is just classic Heck. Look at on page 8 when we zoom in on Professor X's face. What on earth is going on with his eyes? This is just a shockingly bad issue. Steve, what did you think of this issue?
Page 8. Yeah, no, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, that's this was not a good issue. If I had bought this issue, I would be angry that I had spent my 12 cents for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I was saying earlier about saying, like, supposedly he was dying anyway, as he's dying, Professor X says, "I hope to stop him myself before my time was up." And Cyclops says, then that's why you had Jean hold us back? Why you'd been driving us so hard these past days? It's the only explanation. You knew that you were dying. He says, "Yes, Scott, of an illness even I could not cure." Because, of course, he's like the medical genius. I don't know. Yeah, they don't really explain what it was. Just like, oh, I was dying of something. So, but didn't they establish in the Factor 3 storyline that the way they were able to supposedly differentiate between which Professor X was the real one and which wasn't is which one of them was actually using psychic powers?
Yeah.
So, does that mean that Professor X hadn't had any psychic powers since getting back from Factor 3?
It's unclear when the switcheroo happens here. I'm not sure when the switcheroo happens. This will all be made clear in 25 issues from now. Or maybe it won't.
Yes. I look forward with bated breath or something, or not. So, a really disappointing issue.
Yes, very disappointing, but interesting new status quo to have Professor X dead. Okay, let's go ahead and quickly finish up this half of the month with the final story in this X-Men book, The End or the Beginning, The Origins of the Uncanny X-Men, where we finish concluding the untold origin of the X-Men called Cyclops. Stan Lee fondly features the far-out finale of a Roy Thomas Werner Roth 4-part fantasy, inked by Herb Trimpe, lettered by Al Kurzrock. So we have Herb Trimpe inking Werner Roth here, which is a new combo. And I think it looks okay. I think Trimpe is just a very good inker. And I think learning about Trimpe's inking career has been one of the more fascinating things in this podcast because he's very good, and it's interesting to see him ink all these various people. Jack of Diamonds has become all over Diamond, and so he's changed his name from Jack of Diamonds to the Living Diamond, but there was absolutely no reason why he couldn't have kept his name Jack of Diamonds. Professor X, back in the past, back when he was still alive, confronts the Living Diamond, teams up with Scott Summers for the first time, and they figure out how to kill the Living Diamond, which, again, he can sort of blame himself for to a certain extent because of some machinery involved, just like happened in the main story in this issue. And he's gone blasted into atoms before our very eyes. Yes, Scott Summers, destroyed by the same greed which first led him to become a mutant. I tried to save him by capturing him so I could study his radioactive disease, but he wouldn't listen and became his own first and last victim. So then Scott says, okay, I like you, Professor X. Let's stay together. Professor X then creates Scott's visor, and that says next-ish in answer to about a zillion letters, the secret of Cyclops' optic glass. So that's it for this backup story. What did you think of this backup story, Steve?
Certainly better than the lead story in here. Yeah, it was, Jack of Diamonds / Living Diamond is a, forgettable villain. But I like that we've got the first seed that will become the X-Men here. I noticed that on the final panel, Scott Summers at this point in time is still engaging in the magical thinking that he can get rid of his mutant powers at some point. He just wants to be a regular human being again.
Yeah, I don't think he ever completely gives up on that.
Maybe you're right. I guess that he still considers himself to be somewhat of a menace to mankind with his uncontrollable eye-beams. But I just don't really think of that as being a core part of his character, as they seem to be setting it up as here.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's nothing much else to add here, other than I like it.
Yep. Okay, well, that was the first half of this month. Usually we go ahead and record the second half of the month right after, but we will be waiting at least probably about 2 weeks here to record part 2, so you may hear part 2 a little late. But I think that we had some good comics and some weak comics here. My favorite by far was the Hulk story in Tales to Astonish, which I just loved.
Yeah, and I mean, Thor was no slouch either. That was also quite a story, quite an issue.
That was great.
So we had some real high points and at least one really low point, some really high points and some really low points.
Yes.
In this half of the month. But then that's part of what we do around here. That's it from me. I think we can go ahead and say our goodbyes.
Okay, let's go ahead and wrap up the first half of this month, and we'll be back at some point to finish covering the rest of March 1968. We will say goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
All right, take care, everybody. Stay safe out there.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, we now have a Patreon where you can show your appreciation. If you've got a few bucks, head over to patreon.marvelrereadclub.com to support us. Also, you can still rate and review us at your podcatcher of choice, and that would be greatly appreciated as well. You can find us online at marvelrereadclub.com, as well as Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. See you next time.